Welcome back to Thoughts of Ascendance of a Bookworm, and the episode starts with a brief recap of the first episode, and it just re-emphasizes Mind's driving motive to create her own books. And with that, let's get into episode 2, Life Improvements and Slates. Here we see Mind stating that she will make books and starting to wonder how she will get writing materials. She immediately thinks of paper, which makes sense as that would be the first writing material to come to my mind too. However, the exclusivity of books and their extreme price can be used to suggest paper isn't something that exists in this world yet, but we'll discuss this later. Mine then tries to explore her memories to try and learn anything about paper. However, she finds nothing and quickly gets distracted by her hair feeling horrible, like sandpaper. Then Thule returns with a basket of food. Mine then analyzes that the average family doesn't have access to books or schools. This detail explains why we see Thule staying home to help with chores all of the time, but also suggests why the shop signs used pictographs rather than script, simply because the people of this world are uneducated and illiterate. I also want to point out that Mine is scratching her head whilst she talks, because her hair is itchy from being unclean. This both
トイ
shows
レ
a
は
lack of
寝
hygiene
室で
and
おまる
safety,
にして捨てるわ。
as well as hinting towards one of Mine's first life improvements, creating shampoo to wash her hair with, although this idea is very quickly revealed after Mine learns oil can be extracted from the avocado-looking fruit. We then get a chibi scene where we learn two things, some information on Mine's life as Urano, and a recipe on how to make shampoo. The information on Urano is simple, and tells us that she made her own shampoo with her mother, but this does inform us that Mine doesn't just know theory, but that she has practical experience in some areas. The shampoo recipe is also very simple, just some oil, herbs, and salt, but this recipe would be relevant later, when we find out that the people of this world struggle to create it without the recipe. Considering Mine has experience with extracting oil, as she herself stated, she seems to have forgotten much of it because she doesn't listen to Thule's advice and just smashes the fruit, getting oil everywhere. And we then get a rare angry Effa scene, and oh, this face. It's just so great to see. But Mine, after successfully getting some oil, then proceeds to wash her hair with her new shampoo, making her hair this beautiful new glossy colour texture. It looks nicer. And we see the confusion and surprise held by both Effa and Thule as they are curious about what Mine did. And then, Mine delivers the name for her new creation, being Simple All-in-One Shampoo. Just rolls off the tongue. I'm sure it'll be great for marketing. The scene then changes and we hear bells ringing. Unknown to us at the moment, this actually shows a part of this world's system, with bells being used to tell the time, just like they were in older times in our world. We are told that during the day, Thule and Mine are left to look after the house, but today their father forgot a bag, probably with his lunch in it, at home, and so they're going to go and give it to him. But here we see Thule ask worriedly if Mine will be okay to walk to the gate, and she looks surprised yet again, much like in the first episode with the stairs. Mine still fails to recognize the severe limits her body has when it comes to physical activity, and this is shown immediately when she is out of breath, slowly making her way down the stairs. This is a short scene, but it is the start of Mine starting to understand what she can and can't do, as she now understands why Effa gave her a piggyback ride downstairs. Outside of the building, we are introduced to Ralph, the pink-haired one, and Lutz, or as Mine calls them, the Rainbow Hair Squad. We find out that they're going to the forest, presumably to gather firewood, which further shows how children in this world help out with tasks and chores. Mine searches her memories yet again and gives us a brief rundown of the squad before falling over. And here we see Lutz be the first to ask her if she is okay. This characterizes Lutz as kind, and he tries to help Mine by offering to carry her, but he's told he's too weak, and so Ralph offers instead. We then get a bit of romance teasing when Lutz blushes after Mine compliments him, but I'm not really going to talk about this since nothing comes of it. It's a similar situation for Ralph and Thule. I will, however, comment on the differences in hair here though, as it is pointed out Ralph notes that Thule's hair smells nice, and first off, rude. I would feel like, what, I don't usually smell nice if I were Thule. But I'm sure it wasn't meant like that. But more seriously, this shows us that Mine is sharing her life improvements with the people she knows, and we will see as the show goes on that those around Mine have their hair become shiny too as they use her inventions. This particular detail is small, but it shows the impact Mine's creations have on those around her. Mine then gets flustered when Lutz comments on her own hair, because she apparently has never been complimented like that before. We then reach the south gate where Gunter works, and Thule gives him the bag. Inside the gate, we are properly introduced to Gunter for the first time, and we see just how much he loves his daughters as he brags about them to a fellow guard. The fact that the guard notes he is doing it again further emphasizes how proud he is of his daughters, and that he loves them dearly. A noble then arrives at the gate, and although we don't see them, we learn that the guards are required to inform the lord of their arrival. This could be for numerous reasons, like security, to allow the lord to prepare, or just for documentation purposes, but it just tells us a bit more about the world and its systems. And now we meet Otto as he gives a report on the noble that just arrived and reveals it was Count Lowenhardt, who is also known as Guy Brunewald, from just northwest of the Central District, although geography and politics are not important at this stage in the show. We learn that a seal is required to enter for nobles, implying that the checks are there for security reasons. But we then see what looks like paper with writing on it, and Mine immediately gets excited. Mine is told to not get in the way of work, but here we learn that the material is parchment paper. Parchment isn't used commonly today, largely for the fact that it's not very easy to make, and is therefore expensive. Although it does last longer than paper, so a lot of judicial and religious texts are often written on parchment. But this implies that paper doesn't exist in this world yet, because it's both cheaper and easier to make than parchment, and so would likely be used if they had access to it. Mine then determinedly looks at her father and begs for parchment, but is rejected because she can't read or write yet, which is a very valid reason. That and it's expensive. In fact, we find out that one sheet of parchment would cost a month of Gunter's salary, and we know that he's the captain of the gate. So although we don't know how much he makes, we can imagine that parchment is ridiculously expensive. Here is where we really see the low literacy rate of this world though, when Otto reveals that Gunter isn't very good at reading or writing himself, and is only really able to do the essentials for work. But now Otto offers Mine to learn how to read and write, using a slate, to which she is very grateful. This characterizes Otto as nice, but also tells us that he is one of the few literate people, and this will be pretty important about halfway through this season when he introduces us to one of our major side characters. For reasons we will learn of later, it also ends this scene with Gunter being jealous of Otto for showing off to Mine in a way he can't. And with that, we reach the midpoint of the episode. Returning to the episode, Mine informs us about winter preparations and how it has distracted her from being able to make books, and that they are going to celebrate Pork Stocking Day. We are told by Thule that on Pork Stocking Day everyone butchers pigs and creates sausages and smoke the meat to make it through the winter. They are clearly just getting food to store to have reserves for when the winter prevents hunting and harvesting, but it is interesting how they have turned it into a celebration. Mine comments on the butchering of pigs and wishes she had gotten a fever in order not to go. This highlights one of Mine's prevalent feelings, that being a dislike towards death and killing. We saw it in the last episode, when she fainted upon seeing the chicken be butchered, and we are hearing about it again here in regard to pigs being butchered. Although I don't think there's any specific reason for this, and it's perfectly fine for there not to be. It is a recurring idea with Mine, and if I had to guess, I would say overcoming this is going to be a major part of the upcoming season with the Haas storyline. But as we get through the gate, we see the outside world for the first real time, as we see the mountains and farmland beyond the city walls. And although Mine enjoys the scenery, she does complain about the poor quality roads she's being dragged over, which I would personally hate it too. At the festival, Mine is told to stay to the side so as to not get in the way, which she doesn't mind as it allows her to brainstorm. Given the revelation that buying paper would financially cripple her family, she decides to make her own. But to her credit, she acknowledges that she can't do it with just her hands. We then see some men chasing a pig, at which Mine turns her nose up and calls it primitive. I thought Mine had thrown out femininity and shame in order to survive, but I suppose she has maintained some standards. This thought, however, causes her to think about what was used before machinery was invented, and I feel like the language is a bit wrong in this sentence, because in our history, paper existed in China since around the 2nd century, long before modern machinery. So I feel like the word should be methods or equipment rather than machinery, but that's just a nitpick on my part. But anyway, this brings Mine to papyrus, like the ancient Egyptians used. She decides to make pseudo-papyrus to write on using grass, but is then charged at by a pig before the killing of it causes her to faint again. When Mine wakes up, she is in the gate with Otto. We then get this cute scene of her doing the salute to Otto and him returning it. Otto then gives Mine a slate and some chalk as he promised he would earlier in the episode. On the slate, he writes Mine's name and tells her to practice whilst he works. We can assume based on Mine's name that the language used in this world is a phonetic one, where each character represents a sound and those characters are compounded to form words. These languages tend to focus on writing the word as it is pronounced. This typically means that if you can understand all the characters, you can usually know how to pronounce written words, whereas more logographic languages, like Chinese, rely on images to convey meaning and ideas. It wouldn't have mattered which writing system was chosen, but I think the phonetic system could be used to fit the European aesthetic more, since most European languages are largely phonetically written. Language aside, we see Mine takes great joy in learning to write, writing her name until it fills the slate. Amongst her joy, she returns to writing in Japanese, likely to get some variety in writing besides her own name. Although upon writing Motosu Urano, she sighs and says that's not her name anymore. This shows an acceptance of her new life compared to her rejection of it in the last episode. She then writes down the names of all those she has met in Japanese, before continuing to write more. After we hear some bells ring, Mine gets picked up by her father, and the fact that he returns after the bells ring does further reveal to us that the bells are used to inform people of the time. But we see Mine has developed a fever and has written hot on her slate in Japanese. Her fevers being associated with hotness isn't unusual. In our world, people get hot when they have fever, so it just serves as a signifier of Mine's condition. Back in bed, Mine tries some of the sausage Thule and the others made during the festival, and she readily accepts it and says it tastes great. After eating, Mine doesn't follow Thule's advice of going straight to sleep, but instead pulls out the slate. For shame, putting writing above health. How dare she? But we are then told that Mine has forgotten her brilliant idea of creating papyrus, and then the ending plays. This episode's chibi segment is Mine being embarrassed about how she forgot about the papyrus idea, with Ferdinand commenting that her clumsiness is nothing new. It's interesting that Ferdinand points out he didn't expect a shampoo to be made this early, suggesting that whilst he knew of Mine's inventions, he didn't know precise details of when the earlier ones were made. But with Mine almost spoiling us once again, the episode ends. If you made it this far, thank you for watching and please leave your thoughts down below. Bye!